everyone. We're going to start out today's lesson with a right into the day. My question for you today, and I want you to take up, I don't know, about 3 minutes for your response. Does freedom mean different things to different people? Why do you think that? And do you know someone who believes in different freedoms than you? Elaborate. So since we can't have a full discussion since you guys are at home and I'm not at your home, I thought I'd go ahead and give you my response to this to see if you could compare how our brains work. So for me, I do think that freedom means different things for different people, because some people will be constrained by a strict parent or a strict religion, while other people feel like they need that kind of restraint in their lives, or that they have a reason for that kind of restraint in their lives. So I think that freedom means different things to different cultures and different religions, different genders, honestly. Just because everybody has a different experience in their life. And I think that that leads to what they believe about freedoms. So that discussion leads us into our agenda for the day. We already did our right into the day. We're going to focus in this lesson on the Declaration of Independence, and our literary skill that we're going to be looking at are rhetorical appeals, or these appeals to emotion, logic, and authority. So we're going to read through the Declaration of Independence, or you're going to read it on your own. It's actually a PDF that we have linked in Kiddom. And then you're going to answer some comprehension questions about those before we discuss the appeals to emotion, appeals to logic, and appeals to authority. We're going to have a little brain break where you guys watch and listen to a music video called Too Late to Apologize, the Declaration. It's a little parody, like what if Timbaland had been the producer of the Declaration of Independence, and that is also linked in Kiddom, because when I try and record any kind of video while I'm recording my screen, it does not sound good, like you can't hear it all, so this is the way we're going to do it. So once you need a little break, you can go listen to that, and then you guys are going to skim, not read deeply at all, but skim 2 other declarations that were written I think about 100 years and then 150 years after Thomas Jefferson wrote the official Declaration of Independence in 1776. And you're going to compare those declarations for their structure and their use of appeals. So are they similar? Are they different? And then you're going to write your own. So I'll get you some more information about you writing your own declaration when we get to that point in the lesson. By the end of this lesson, I would like you guys to be able to define the different kinds of rhetorical appeals, and that's it. That's what we're working on. So let's get started. All right, so again, just to reiterate, you guys are learning the structure of an argument and how arguers / speakers / writers use appeals to emotion, logic, and authority. You're going to be learning that from reading the Declaration of Independence and working through some questions and annotations, and then writing your own 1 to 2 page declaration about a modern issue. You're going to know that you learned this content by being able to define the appeals to emotion, logic, and authority, and then also because you are able to use said appeals in your own writing. So what I want you to do first, I'm going to put a little pause here, and I want you to go into Kiddom and open up that PDF of Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. And I want you to, if you can, write down the words that you don't know and look them up, or you can highlight them if you have that ability in your computer or phone, and then look those up as well. Because this was written in 1776, he uses some words and language that we just don't use in modern 2020. So there's going to be some stuff that you come across that you are like, what is happening? So I want you to take some initiative in your learning and look those words up for yourself. And then I want you to write down your general takeaway of what he's arguing. All right, let's go over some comprehension questions. This one is, what does Jefferson state directly as the reason this declaration had to be written? So the purpose that he wrote this declaration, oh my goodness, typos. That's terrible. So sorry. The purpose is to give the reasons why it has become necessary for the United States to dissolve a political bond and become a separate nation. He wants the colonists that are following him and his fellow founding fathers, as well as the people of England and the king, he wants them to know why the United States is choosing to rebel. Number 2, according to Jefferson, what is a people's duty when their government is abusive? And he means people as in like the constituents, the people of the country. So what is our duty as Americans to do when the government is abusing them? Jefferson says that their duty is to throw off or overthrow the government and put safeguards in place to keep this from happening again, which is what the Founding Fathers did when they created the checks and balances in the 3 branches of government after they, won that war. Comprehension check 3, what new relationship between Great Britain and the United States is announced in this document? If the 2 countries can repair their relationship, peace may be restored, but if not, they will continue to engage in war as enemies. So Jefferson and the colonists aren't opposed to working it out with England and the king, but they are asking for their rights to be heard and to have representation in the British government, which they didn't have before. But if they don't get those things, then they are going to wage all-out war. All right, so the last comprehension check is for you to write a brief objective summary of the Declaration of Independence. Objective means that you don't put your opinion in there. So you just write a summary of what exactly Jefferson said in about 3 sentences. So I'm looking for 1, the purpose that we already defined, and then the reasons that Jefferson has for that purpose. So what are the things that he lists as reasons for wanting to rebel? And your answers are going to vary, but this is an example of some of the more important things. So all people are created equal and entitled to certain inalienable rights, for the protection of which governments are created. For people in the American colonies, the king has not protected those rights. He has committed numerous offenses against the colonies and ignored their attempts to seek redress or help out their grievances. The colonists have appealed to the British people too, but they have not helped their quote-unquote brethren obtain fair treatment of the king. For these reasons, the colonies declare themselves independent of Great Britain and have created a new government with the full powers of independent states. So yours should look something like that. All right, so now we're going to get into the skills of today's lesson. We're going to be focusing on rhetorical appeals. I keep saying rhetorical appeals. The word rhetoric means argument. So this might be a review of last year's argument unit as sophomores, where I know that you guys focused on some rhetoric when you were reading the Martin Luther King speech letter from the Birmingham jail. So if this is a review, great. But I know that you guys haven't been at school for 5 months, so I thought that this might be a nice way to kind of reincorporate some of that learning from last year into our content in American literature. So an appeal to emotion, another word for that would be pathos. These are ideas or language, like words, that attempts to influence readers' feelings. Appeals to emotion may include charged language, so something with really strong connotation, as well as figurative language. A lot of time, not a lot of times, but sometimes an appeal to emotion can also reference religious or moral beliefs because people have a lot of feelings about those. And then you could also tell a personal anecdote or a personal story to appeal to your audience's emotions. I want to note here that arguments based fully on emotions are not usually very strong. Arguments based fully on emotions tend to be like propaganda, where the author is trying to really manipulate its audience into believing their side without any really strong evidence of what their side is. So you have to be careful when you use too much appeal, when you appeal to emotions too much. Appeals to logic are ideas or language that connects the reader's rationality or reason. So an appeal to logic would be when the author shows the relationships between their evidence and their facts, so the consequences or outcomes. So logic can be seen when a author has like a really solid main idea and then a lot of evidence that supports that main idea. You can also see logic when an author uses a counter argument where they like look at that counter or opposite side and then they either concede, which would be agree, or refute that opposite side and give reasons why. Why that is a logic thing and it's an appeal to logic is because you would logically know that the author has looked at every side of an argument and can still refute or disagree with it. And then the final one is an appeal to authority. I want to emphasize that an appeal to authority is all about the author, the writer, the speaker. It is showing their authority on a subject, okay? So an appeal to authority shows the writer's special expertise or shows why that writer has character or experience or knowledge in that specific subject area. And I'm sorry about my typo there again. So I am not an authority in cars. So if I tried to write a whole speech about why Honda was better than Ram, I would not be able to appeal to authority because I don't know anything about it. But a lot of you have a lot of authority in cars, so you would be able to write that speech a whole lot better than me and give a whole lot more credentials about your experience with cars than I would. However, I do have a lot of authority in how to garden. So if I were to write an entire speech about why everybody in Murfreesboro should have a garden in their yard and if they can, then I would be able to appeal to authority a whole lot because I've had a garden for years and years and years. So again, the appeal to authority is all about the author's experience. How are they an authority in their subject area? All right, so let's practice. If you could, you're going to want to open up in a separate window or on your phone if you're using a computer, your PDF of a Declaration of Independence so that you can look at that as you're answering these textual questions. And I am going to ask you to pull a couple of textual quotes to support your answers in these ones. So practice number 1 has 2 parts. Make sure you answer both parts. So I'm looking for 2 sentences here. 1 sentence that answers part A, 1 sentence that answers part B. If you write more power to you, as long as it's on topic. All right, so part A, what appeal to emotion does Jefferson use in paragraph 1? And why is this an important technique for him to use as he begins his argument? Okay, so your answers may vary here because he uses a lot of appeals to emotion in that first paragraph. But one that you might have noticed is that he really emphasizes the word unanimous, which means all together, and that word invokes the sense of unity in the colonies, that they are all in this together. And I think that he uses that technique to suggest that the colony's decision is the correct one and that it eases the colonists from any fear that they might have of rebelling against this giant country all by themselves. Like, this is showing that they are all unanimously in this together. Question 2, part A. So mark examples of appeals to emotion in this excerpt from paragraph 2. So what you could do, I'm just asking you to look at all of paragraph 2, but what you could do is just like write down a couple of the words that appeal to emotion in the answer box in a second. And then I want you to answer, how does the description of Great Britain and its king constitute charged language? So I want you to explain citing those specific words. All right, so answers could vary, obviously, again, but something that you could have noticed is that Jefferson uses the words abuses and usurpations. Usurpations is when you take away somebody's power. So like if I took away your car keys, then I would usurp your ability to drive yourself around. So Jefferson uses that loaded language, the term abuse, it's very negative, to contrast the colonists' rights. Question number 3, which kind of appeal is represented by Jefferson's organized list of grievances? And then B, how does that evidence he provides add to his argument? All right, so answers were going to vary again here, but the list of grievances is based on evidence, so that's logic, right? He's got evidence to support his main idea that the king is treating them poorly. So that hits on reasoning and ethical judgment. Jefferson didn't make these issues up. He has hard evidence of them happening for years. And then that evidence ensures that the argument will not be discounted as just an emotional appeal, because like I said, emotional appeals are not very persuasive. It's good to have some emotional appeal, but you really need logic to make sure that your argument has legs and that people can trust you. All right, question number 4. Jefferson wrote this document during the Age of Reason, an era characterized by logic and scientific methodology. How does the Declaration of Independence reflect Jefferson's faith in reason, reflect Jefferson's faith in logic? So Jefferson's declaration is a demonstration of logical thinking valued during the Age of Reason, because he uses just that giant list of evidence. He goes on and on and on about all of the grievances and terrible things that the king has done to the colonists. I want you to pay attention to that structure as we move in to the next segment of today's lesson. I think we have a brain break first, though. Yes, brain break. So at this point, you've been working pretty hard. I want you to, if you're at home, watch this video, just kind of relax for a little bit, go get some water, take a potty break, whatever you need to do. And then when you come back, we're going to move into the second half of today's lesson. All right, so comparison. What you need to do now is to go into Kittim, and I have uploaded 2 other declarations. One was written in 1848. It's by a woman named Stanton. It was a declaration of sentiments and resolutions. I want you to know right now that there is a list of questions at the beginning of that PDF. You do not have to do them. Repeat, you do not need to do the list of questions at the top of Stanton's declaration. Okay, I just want you to skim over it and look at how her declaration compares to Jefferson's. Same with Garvey's. Okay, he wrote his declaration in 1920, which is why he still uses that very archaic word right there that you might be seeing, which I am not going to say. It should be Declaration of the Rights of Black People. So look at both of those declarations and pay attention to the structure. How do they both start out? Do they have a list of grievances? Do they use emotional and logical appeals? Do they show how the author is an authority on their topic? And finally, this is your big culminating assignment for this lesson. I want you to write your own declaration. It needs to be about 1 to 2 pages in length. So it doesn't have to be a bunch of giant paragraphs, because I want you to follow the same structure as the declarations before you. You saw in all 3 of the declarations that the paragraphs were pretty short. They had a longer beginning, you know, where they're talking about what their purpose is. They're declaring their freedom from blank and why. And then there's a whole bunch of shorter paragraphs that list their issues and what they want rights from. Okay, so I want you to follow that same structure. A bigger introductory paragraph, and then a whole bunch of shorter paragraphs that list the grievances. I want you to use 2 emotional appeals and 2 logical appeals, and then 1 appeal to authority. Why do you have authority to talk on this topic? Okay, and then I want you to highlight those appeals in different colors so that I know that you're using them. Finally, what are you writing about? You can write your declaration about any modern issue that you feel passionate about. So if you felt really passionate about the handling of COVID, write yourself a declaration. If you feel really passionate about gun control, talk about it. School lunch, education, dress code, legalization of marijuana, racial inequality, healthcare, LGBTQ rights, etc. You can write your declaration about anything that you feel like you are an authority on and that you are passionate about. But notice that even though Jefferson, Stanton, and Garvey were all passionate about their topics and authorities on their topics, they kept their wording, their diction, very respectful and very professional. So that's what I'm going to be asking from you as well. You're going to be turning this declaration that you write in on Kidim. There is a box towards the bottom for you to kind of write in, and then you also have the ability to highlight. So that's where you're going to turn it in. I finally, at the very end of this, before you write your creation, I do have a little check. I want you to scan this and fill out the Microsoft form. It's asking you to define the different appeals: appeal to emotion, appeal to logic, and appeal to authority. And then the final question is why it's important to use all 3 of those appeals interchangeably and together in an argument. So why can't you use all authority? Why can't you use all pathos or emotion? Why can't you use all logos or logic? All right, thank you guys. Make sure that you get your creation of your declaration into Kidim and that you fill out this form. And if you have any questions, email or send a remind to your teacher. I think we've all decided that Kidim's comments are pretty clunky and they're really hard for us to respond to as your educators. So email and remind is the best way to get a hold of us, especially during the week, because we don't really have a whole lot of time to sit down and fool with trying to get to the comments in Kidim. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that this helped you.